Have you ever noticed when you talk about the greatest thrash metal albums of all time, they were all released within this one 6-year window? Let's take the big four, for example. When we ask this question, the albums that will come up will be Metallica's Master of Puppets, or Ride the Lightning, Anthrax's Among the Living, Megadeth Rust in Peace, or Slayer's Reign in Blood, amongst others. But you'll notice one thing: all these albums were released within this 6-year window that ran from 1984 to 1990. But what if I told you that I believe that the band Overkill released an album that rivals the aforementioned albums, and it was much later in their career? In other words, a mere 15 years ago in the year 2010. Today I'm talking about Ironbound by Overkill. It was released on January 10, 2010 through Nuclear Blast Records, celebrating its 15th anniversary. In this video, I will be talking about how I discovered the band Overkill when I was a teenager, but I didn't discover this album until many years later. We'll also talk about the production, the critics. I'll break down the songs afterwards, talk about a few of the albums released after this one, and I'll let you know what the band has planned for the next 2 years, and will we see a new album in 2025. Ironbound is a comeback album for the band, as they had mixed reviews for the previous album, such as the album Immortalis. This album, Ironbound, it was a thrasher. It was fast-paced, heavy, brutal. They went back to their thrash roots in this one after dabbling in more of a groove metal sound in the 90s. Songs were more technical, the music was complex, but let me tell you a story about how I first discovered this album. Back in the late 80s, I was a teenager. I was just discovering heavy metal. My favorite subgenre was thrash. I was a fan of all the aforementioned albums from the Big Four as well as others, but for some reason I didn't get into Overkill much later. I was familiar with them. I used to watch the Headbangers Ball. I remember the music video for Hello from the Gutter. I remember being a kid in a record store seeing a vinyl copy of that EP called Fuck You that had this big middle finger on the cover. I guess back then I wasn't ready for the band. I was just easing into metal at the time. Fast forward to the age of streaming, sometime around the year 2015, I found this album by chance. As soon as I heard it, I immediately thought that this was an awesome album. It sounded like thrash. It was the thrash I remembered from the late 80s. So I think this is one of those rare cases where a band from the 80s is able to release a killer album late in their career. I can't say the same about Big Four bands. I can think of maybe Exodus with Tempo of the Damned. I already did a video on that one. But let me talk more about why this is a great album, as well as a late career comeback album. This album has a lot going for it. It has a very polished and professional production level. It's filled with awesome guitar riffs, lots of solos, and some cool bass guitar playing by Dee Verny and the vocals of Bobby Blitz, who still sounds in top form. One thing about Bobby's vocals that I'd always felt they were very high-pitched, but on this album he's able to vary his vocal style, giving him some highs and lows. Now, I'm not the only one who thinks this is a great album. A lot of critics consider this to be a thrash metal masterpiece, or in other words, a thrashterpiece. For example, let me read a quote from the Angry Metal Guy review when he reviewed this back in 2010, and he said, "Holy shit, Overkill is back, and they kick a lot of ass in their old age." There were also a lot of reviewers that said that the band set a new standard for thrash metal in the modern era. This was also not a one-time thing, though. The next few albums were some of their best. For example, the album White Devil Harmony is another one that deserves its own standalone review. I'm sure I'll cover that one someday. As for the songs, there are lots of great tracks on the album. There's the album opener called The Green and the Black. This opens with this awesome bass guitar riff. It slowly builds up. I thought it was reminiscent of some of those old Metallica albums where they had the soft intro that went into the heavy thrash metal songs, like Blackened or Battery. The song has both catchy riffs and technical guitar playing, and some critics have even said it's probably Overkill's best opening track. Then there's the song Ironbound. This is another old school thrasher. This has some tempo changes and cool guitar solos. This is just one of the songs that is very representative of the sound of the album. Then there is Bring Me the Night. This was one of the catchier songs. It still had that thrash metal energy. There's also Endless War, and it had a hard driving rhythm section, and some critics even noticed it had this new wave of British heavy metal sound, similar to Iron Maiden, especially in some of the guitar riffs, as well as the part where Bobby sings the chorus. There's the song Killing for a Living, and on this track, I think the drumming really stands out. There's the album closer called the SRC, which is filled with fast-paced guitar riffs. And if you're wondering, the SRC means Subterranean Resistance Cult. And the lyrics are about rebellion and resistance. the song called Give a Little, which has some memorable backing vocals in the chorus, and another song about individual struggles and resilience. There was also one song that had a very cool song title that was called The Goal Is Your Soul. This song was one that stands out that had a clean intro that went into this mid-paced groove. The intro to the song evokes this haunting atmosphere, very common with many other metal albums. But this intro transitioned perfectly into the song. The song stood out because it had some awesome hooks. There was another song that had this cool bass guitar intro called The Head and the Heart. This was another standout because Bobby sings in a lower register and also had more of a mid-paced rhythm, but they don't sacrifice any of the heaviness with the slower tempo. I read a lot of reviews of this album and almost all the critics gave it a lot of praise. Even the people who write reviews on the Metal Archives website, I saw a few people give the album 100%, and I don't think anyone gave the album less than 75%, which is impressive because there's always that one person who likes to write a negative review, but that wasn't the case for this album. And if there were any negative things to say about the album, they were as follows. Some critics said that some of the songs were too long for thrash, such as the 8-minute plus Green and Black. Other critics said that a lot of songs sounded similar, but for me personally, I didn't feel that. I think it might be because I listened to this album many times over the years. There were some critics who didn't like Bobby's vocal delivery, but he has such a distinct voice. There will always be critics of his singing style because for me personally, I thought he sounded as good as he ever did. As I said before, the band had a streak of good albums after this. In 2012, they released The Electric Age, which was a follow-up to Ironbound. I thought it was not as good, but it's a solid follow-up, which still had a similar sound. After that, in 2014, they released White Devil Armory, which was another strong album and continued that momentum of releasing solid thrash metal albums. During that time, the band also continued to tour. They played different festivals and tours, and just proof that the band was in their later years and didn't show any signs of slowing down. They released a few more albums after that, which were pretty good. I'm thinking The Grinding Wheel from 2017 saw the band take a little bit of a dip, but after that, we got some lots of good albums, The Wings of War from 2019 and Scorched from 2023, which was my number one thrash album of that particular year. Now you're probably wondering what's next for this band. Are they due for a new album? The truth is they're planning another album. They want to start writing it in the first half of 2025, so it's possible they've already started writing it. Then in the second half of 2025, they want to record the album, so I would expect the album to come out sometime early 2026. Also, according to Bobby, he believes they will release the new album under the Nuclear Blast label, but it's not definitive. In the meantime, they will continue to tour throughout Europe and North America, and they also have a new drummer, given that Jason Bittner left the band in August of 2024. As far as I know, I don't think they have given the name of the new drummer yet. So if you're wondering where I would rank this album Ironbound, check out this tier list I made about 2 years ago after the release of Scorched. Watch that one next. In the meantime, thanks for watching. Please give this video a like. It helps me with the YouTube algorithm. Please subscribe if you're not already. I do rock and metal reviews, rankings, and more. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.